You get this out of the way. And of course, you got all this modeling stuff. Now, to get to video editing, there's a couple different ways. You can click this plus up here at the top and go to video editing, and then video editing again. And that takes you to the video editing interface. You can also do or open a video editing project specifically by going to File, New, Video Editing. Now you'll see you only have video editing and rendering up here. Now just a quick blurb about why you should use Blender as a video editor, or why you could. It's basically, it can do everything. It can do the stuff all the big editors can do, and it can do pretty much all formats. It does have a few limitations, so let's get started. Now, the first thing you probably want to do is your main configurations, and that's over here on the right side. You want to make sure that this output right here is set to where you want your video to save. I don't want it to go to temp. I would rather it go to a folder on my D drive called render. So I'm going to click that and hit accept. And accept again. And now it's going to save to that folder, so I know where to find it when it's all done. And you want to scroll down a little bit here and change file format to FFmpeg video. There are other formats too, or maybe you actually do want a bunch of PNGs, but in general you probably want a video if you're video editing. There we go. And then you also want to check this encoding drop down and scroll down some and look for audio. Under audio, you want to change the audio codec to AAC. And you can leave everything alone. Everything else here is optional. As you can see, there are options to do a bunch of different things. You're welcome to play around with those, but they are just not required to get things going, and we're just looking at the basics. So now that you've got that started, let's go ahead and save. In case something goes wrong, you don't want to have to redo your settings. So hit save, give it a title, and as you can see, it's a .blend file. We're just going to call this video editing. Long title, I know. And hit save. Of course, keep note where you saved it. Now let's talk a little bit about how to actually get a video in here and how to interact with this space a little bit. So down here you see the sequencer. And if you're familiar with Blender at all, you'll know that you can modify these as you want just by clicking on the edges and dragging. And I don't want to talk about that a whole lot because that's more of a Blender specific thing. But this is the default, and we're just going to stick with the default. So in the sequencer, if you hover over the sequencer, you can use your mouse wheel to change your zoom. You can hold your mouse wheel down to drag the sequencer. And a right click brings up a menu. And you'll see some things in here that can help you once you're actually editing. We may or may not use that. Left click is what clicks things. There's nothing in here yet. Let's go ahead and bring in a video. You'll see up here by default that we have a file explorer. You can use this file explorer to drag things in or bring things in. You can also just use your operating system's file explorer to bring things in. I'm going to go ahead and go to my D drive by just typing it in there. You can also use these buttons here to go back, forward, up, refresh. But on my D drive, I have a rec or recording folder. If you're bringing video in from your phone, you do need to bring that in somewhere and navigate to it. Okay, so we're going into the recording folder, and there's a bunch of various videos. I'm just going to grab, I guess this one looks fine, and I'm just going to bring it down here into the sequencer. There we go. So now I can zoom out a little bit, scroll around by holding the mouse wheel down and kind of see the length of it. And getting to the end here, you can look at the top and see the times. Now the first one is the minute seconds. Here you see it's like 50. Over here it's getting to 1 minute. And the second one after the plus is how many frames. When you really zoom in, you can see the frames more carefully. There's frame 40, there's frame 12. And also I should mention, when you bring in a video, it automatically sets up here in these settings the frame rate. As you can see, this set it to 60 because this video was rendered at 60 frames per second. Now, a really important thing here about these frames is it doesn't really do well with videos of different frame rates. So if I now tried to bring in a video recorded at 30 FPS, it would not work well together. I would have to do some weird things. So it might be best to get them all in the same format before you bring them into Blender to edit them. And there are other tools to do that, such as Handbrake, and I believe OpenShot Video Editor will put them all in the same frame rate. So you could just do an export with those or a conversion with Handbrake. But that's really a side point, and that's only necessary if you're pulling video from different sources. Different phones often record at different frame rates, or if you're using recording software, it might be recording at different frame rates. But I feel like that's necessary to mention because that can get people caught up. And now we want to scroll out so we can actually see everything. Keep scrolling out, mouse wheel, get it all centered up. And you'll see here, there's an area that's lighter. This light area is where it's actually rendering. And you can drag this playhead here to view your video. Now, as you can see, it's kind of lagging as I'm going here, doing a lot of lagging. I'm actually clicking and dragging still, but it's just lagging and lagging. And that's pretty normal. It's because it has to catch up and render this video as you're dragging. Now, if you don't want it to do that, if you don't want it to show your video so you can actually work a bit faster, you can change this previewer to something else. Maybe just another sequencer for this moment. Now you can see when I drag, it's super fast and responsive. That can be nice if you're editing mostly off the audio. Now the audio track is this bottom one, the teal one, and you can click over in the properties here, display waveform, and that will show you your actual audio waveform. That way you can tell maybe which points it's loud or you're talking, or which points you want to cut because it's too boring or something like that. It can often help to see that waveform. So I guess it's a good time to mention that over here is where your properties come up for anything you've clicked on in your sequencer. If I click on the video, I get this video clip here. I get the properties of it. If I click on the audio, then I get the audio properties. So most videos do come with an audio track and a video track. And you'll see some little tabs way over on the side here that you can click on to get other options. Sometimes you may accidentally click on these, so just know that if you're not seeing the right options, check these tabs and make sure you're on the right one. I'm looking at strip. All right, so let's actually change this render area to one we need, because right now, if for example we hit play right here, you can hit play down here, or you can hit spacebar. It loops based on where you have it starting and ending, which can be nice if you're working on an effect for that little part. And you can always change these. At the bottom right here, you see a start and an end. These are frames. So we're going to keep the start at 1, but we want to change the end to the end of our video. So you can either click and drag. I guess my left button down thing is in the way. But basically, you see these wide arrows it makes. You can click and drag there to change it. And you can also just type it in. You can just go in there. I guess I'll get this over for a second so those button things aren't in the way. But you can just physically type it in here if you know exactly what frame it is. And it does tell you your current frame of this playhead. So sometimes you can go off that. For example, you can hit page up to go to the end of the current strip, and then click this, do a copy, and then paste it on the end, and you get the exact one that way. So now some basics. You can cut this up, make parts shorter or longer, whatever you want to do with it. And I'm going to show you a little bit of that, and then I'll show you how to render. You can also layer more videos. Let's bring in another one. Maybe you want clips from separate videos. So here's another one. We could like cut them and put it in the middle, but here to do this grab thing, I'm just clicking and box selecting and then clicking the clip and left button down, moving it. Pretty straightforward operation there. You just click one of them and move it, and they get misaligned. Now if you get them misaligned, what you can do is hit Control Z, go back, standard undo, and you can also snap. So if you got it like this, if you want to get it to line up, and you hold Control, it begins to snap. So it's trying to snap here, and then it's snapping over here. And that can help with the lineup too, that little snap option. Let's say, I don't know, let's just do a random example here. Say I want to cut out some of this. So maybe the beginning of this first one's really boring. So if you control click on an edge where the edge is a slightly different color, you grab the edge, and now when you click and drag on the left button down, you actually change the length at the start. So maybe I want to cut off that whole part. Then I clicked out of here to unclick it. And I'll go to the end and do the same thing. I'll hold Control and click, and as you can see, it didn't grab both. That's because these clips are slightly different length. Now that tends to happen with videos. Sometimes the video and the audio are a frame different. This is 1786 frames and this one's 1787. So I'm going to first grab this and just snap it to the end. Now they're the same. So when you control click on things that, oh, I guess they're not. Maybe, okay, this one needs to be shortened. 1786. So now that they're both the same length on the end, control click selects them both. So control click will select everything of the same length. That includes entire bars, and if you're doing the end, it includes matching ends. So if I control click on this one, they also don't both select because they're probably one frame off. A lot of recording software just tends to do that. So maybe I want to go ahead and get that one sorted out too by changing this. Okay, so now when I control click, it selects them both. So just a little note on that control click to select both. So we'll cut off a little bit of the end on that one. And then say maybe we want to cut out this middle part where it's a bit boring. Now you notice I can't bring this playhead back here because it's 4.0. That's just the way Blender is. But if I move this up here, and let's move this other one out of the way, we can take our playhead to here and select both of these, and we can cut them. You can do a right click and do split. As you can see, it tells you the hotkey, just K. You see other options in here like add transition, fade, clear fade, movie strip, make meta strip. We're really not going to get into those too much, but know that those are useful. You're welcome to play around with them. Just if you mess something up, you can always press Control Z and undo what you just did. So I'm going to do a control click to click both of these, and I'm going to press that K shortcut. And that now splits the clips, and we can interact with them as though they're separate clips. So we'll just do a little playing around here and drag the end of this one. So previously in Blender, to move clips around, you couldn't just left click. You used to have to press G for grab and do it, which still works, but now you can just click and drag if they're selected. So that's one of the major changes in this new version. All right, well, the software I was using to do the key things has crashed. So no more of that. I think you got the gist of it though. Okay, so we're going to grab this end here. And we'll move this over. And if you overlap it a little, it gets red, and basically that means it's going to snap out of there to the end. So they are lined up now. So a little overlap's no big deal. If you want to precision move these around while you're dragging, you hold shift. So holding shift, it barely moves. But without holding shift, it moves a lot. Alright, so that's looking okay. We did a few things. Maybe we'll throw in one more cut here. So I'm going to highlight these, press K again, cut some of this, and there we go. Now our clip is split up. If we want to see what that looks like, we can take our, I don't know, let's just see how the transitions look. We'll put the start right here, and we'll put the end right there. And then we'll go up here and change this to previewer. And it's going to kind of lag out because it's actually got to load the video. And we'll press space, and now we can kind of see what these transitions look like. It does lag a little bit in the transitions. And it's still lagging a bit. It's pretty normal for it to lag a little bit when you're hitting play. As you can see, it's bringing down this FPS. Also, because I'm recording to this drive I'm editing on, probably part of the reason why. So let's stop that. There we go. And you can always render it out. If you want to see what something really looks like and how it's going to render, you can go ahead and go to render and render animation, and it will render that section that you have for the start and end. Let's say, for example, we just want to go over here and add some of this other one, and I'll just do something random. Let's do a display waveform. Cut off some of the end. We'll go over here and cut some of this. Okay, move that over. I'll cut some of this. And we'll just drag it down here, line it up, drag it down here. Now, something kind of crazy happens when you drag across the playhead, and it basically lags you out like crazy. And that's because this preview is up. So you can either move the playhead out of the way, or you can change this to sequencer. I'm going to change it to sequencer because I'm not a big fan of that super lag. Move it down here, move this down here. Go ahead and change the end. Right there. We're not going to worry about getting it exact. Middle click and drag over, change the start to here. And now we could render this out and get a little clip with all these cuts. But if we want to start getting fancy here, I'll show you a few more tricks. Let's grab this here, move it up a couple. I'll hold Control so it snaps. And also press, see, while you're moving around, you can press X to stick with X or Y to stick on the Y. Some nice little hotkeys there. But what you can do here, let me zoom in, is you can overlap them a little bit with the previous one, and then click the video and the video on the overlap, and then right click and go to fade, or let's not fade, transition, and do a wipe, a gamma cross, or a cross. Let's do wipe. So it adds a little wipe thing that's the length of the overlap. And you can go over here to the properties while the wipe is selected, and you can change it. There's some transition types: single, double, iris, clock, in, out, blur width, angle, and those are the main things you want to mess with. But you can see what those look like. So you can get a little play around, and let me go to the previewer, and this is just the default single wipe. Now you couldn't really see it, so I'd have to render this out. I guess you can click and wait for it to kind of lag. As you can see, it's doing a wipe right there in the middle. So if I change this, say I up the blur width a little bit, you can see how it's blurring. Or if I change this to double, you can see it's wiping on both sides. I guess the blur is kind of making that hard to see. But you can see what your transition is going to look like by just sitting here and having it on the sequencer. And the volumes, if you want the volumes to fade, you just select both the volumes. Use Shift to click both the volumes. So you click the first one, hold Shift, click the second one, then you can right click and go to crossfade sounds. And that will just make the sounds so they don't, just a standard crossfade. And you can do that with any clips where it seems like it's a good idea. I don't know, I guess it's up to your video editing knowledge or video producing knowledge. Typically you don't want to crossfade in between similar scenes. Usually it's when it's going to a whole new scene. But this is just for the sake of example. So I'm going to delete this. And maybe we want to just back these up, put it in there. Oh, I did something weird, so I'm going to hit Control Z. Control Z again. There we go. It looks like it's just not lining up too well. There we go. Let's zoom out a little bit. I'm going to box select all of these, move them over, grab this, put it there. And now this was a whole different video over on this side, so maybe that's when we want the actual nice transition. So we'll do a little overlap. Now the typical good overlap length is 2 seconds. That's just from my experience. So if we look on here, we'll go like 24, this goes to about 25 and 36. We want like the 23 and 36. And we'll just drag it over to approximately that, maybe about there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but this is just a general rule for them that tends to work. So I'll select both the videos again, go to add transition, wipe, and try the fades too, however you want to do it. We'll do a wipe in with a iris this time. And we'll also go to the sounds and cross fade the sounds. So there's a lot of stuff you can play around with. And then we'll line these last ones up. Not seeming, oh, there we go. I had to click on them to move them. Change the end to the actual end. And then when you're ready to render, you just go up here and click render. And it's going to take a while. But when it's all done, you will find it in this location here where you put it. Thanks for watching.